The spaceport on Nexus Station was busy and loud. Ships from many planets came and went, their engines making the metal floors shake. Aliens and humans walked quickly past each other, some arguing over prices, others checking cargo lists on glowing screens. The air smelled of fuel, food from different worlds, and too many bodies in one place. Away from the main paths, where the lights weren't as bright, two tall aliens moved carefully between large shipping containers. They wore silver robes that caught what little light reached this forgotten corner. The Velsarians had skin that shimmered slightly, with large eyes that could see well in the dark. The female, Lyri, held a small bundle wrapped in soft blue material. Inside was their child, smaller than a human baby, but with 6 thin limbs and pale, almost translucent skin. "Are you sure we must do this?" Lyri whispered, her voice breaking. She gently touched the child's face one last time. Moro, her mate, looked around nervously. "We have tried everything." 3 doctors on our homeworld said the same thing. "The gravitic organs are too damaged. We cannot afford the treatments, and without them." He couldn't finish. Lyri nodded, tears falling from her large eyes. Velsarians needed functioning gravitic organs to control their movement in different gravity conditions. Without them, their child would never walk, never swim in the floating pools of their homeworld, never join the traditional sky dances. "Someone here might help," Moro said softly. "The humans have different technology, different medicine." Lyri placed their child carefully in a dry, sheltered spot between 2 containers. The baby made a soft humming sound, not crying as humans would, but still a sound of distress. Moro placed a small crystal next to the child. The crystal held their message and their child's medical information. "Be well, little one," Lyri whispered. Then the Velsarian couple turned and walked away quickly, not looking back, because they couldn't bear to. High above the docking bay, in a large office with windows that could darken or become transparent with a touch, Jae-ho Kim watched the scene. He stood perfectly still, one hand resting on his desk. Jae-ho was not tall for a human, but he carried himself with confidence that made him seem bigger. His black suit was perfectly clean despite the dusty air of the station. At 53 years old, his hair showed touches of gray at the temples, and the lines around his eyes told stories of difficult decisions. People feared Jae-ho Kim. His business network controlled much of the trade in this sector, some legal, much of it not. Those who crossed him tended to disappear. Those who worked for him grew rich, if they followed his rules. The authorities knew what he was, but could never prove enough to stop him. Jae-ho touched a button on his desk. "Ta-woo, come here now," he said. His voice was calm and quiet, as it always was, even when ordering someone's death. Ta-woo arrived quickly, a young man with sharp eyes and fast hands. He had worked for Jae-ho for 5 years, and was one of the few people the older man trusted. "Yes, sir?" Ta-woo asked, standing just inside the door. Jae-ho pointed to the docking bay below. 2 Velsarians just left their child behind those red containers. "Bring it to me before station security finds it." Ta-woo looked surprised but knew better than to question. He nodded and left immediately. Alone again, Jae-ho turned to look at an old photograph on his desk. It showed a young boy in a hospital bed, smiling despite the machines connected to him. Jae-ho's brother, Min-ho, had been born with a rare condition that affected his lungs. Their family had been poor then, factory workers on Earth with no connections, no money for the expensive treatments Min-ho needed. Jae-ho remembered how he had worked 3 jobs, stolen medicines, begged doctors for help. In the end, none of it mattered. Min-ho had died at 11 years old. That was the day Jae-ho promised himself he would never be powerless again. 30 minutes later, Ta-woo returned carrying a small bundle. The Velsarian child was barely moving, its breathing irregular. Its 6 limbs bent at odd angles that looked painful. Jae-ho could see right away that something was wrong with the child's internal systems. "There was this with it," Ta-woo said, handing over the crystal. Jaiho placed it in a reader on his desk. The message appeared in the air above it, translating automatically from Velsarian to human standard language. Cannot afford specialized treatment for gravitic organ deficiency. Please find someone who can help where we cannot. Jaiho looked at the child more carefully. Velsarians needed their gravitic organs to control their movement in different gravity fields. Without them working properly, the child would be considered severely disabled in Velsarian society. The treatment was expensive and rarely successful. To his surprise, Jaiho felt something stir inside him, a feeling he hadn't experienced in many years. He remembered sitting beside Minho's bed, promising to find a way to help him, watching the hope in his brother's eyes. "Sir," Ta Wu asked, uncomfortable with the silence. "Should I call station security?" "No," Jaiho said firmly. He carefully took the child from Ta Wu's arms. The baby Velsarian made a soft humming sound and seemed to relax slightly in his hold. "Prepare my private shuttle. We're leaving the station." "Where are we going?" Ta Wu asked, already reaching for his communicator. "First, find Dr. Hana Park. She's the best xenobiologist in the sector. Tell her I'll pay triple her usual fee." And then, Jaiho looked down at the small alien child. "Then we're going to do what these parents couldn't. We're going to find a way to help this child." Ta Wu stared at his boss in confusion. "Sir, with respect, why do you care about one alien baby?" Jaiho's eyes hardened. "That's not your concern. Just do as I say." As Ta Wu left to carry out his orders, Jaiho sat down with the child. The baby's large eyes blinked up at him, showing no fear, only curiosity. "Don't worry, little one," Jaiho said quietly. "I may be a bad man in many ways, but I keep my promises, and I promise you this, you will not be abandoned twice." Dr. Su Jin Yoon stepped out of the black car and looked up at the tall walls around Jaiho Kim's home. Men with guns stood at the gate, watching her closely. She held her medical bag tightly and tried to look calm. "This way, doctor," said the driver who had picked her up from her small clinic 3 hours ago. He didn't explain why she was here, only that Jaiho Kim needed her medical skills and would pay well. Everyone in this part of space knew about Jaiho Kim. His ships carried goods between planets, some legal, many not. People who helped him got rich. People who got in his way disappeared. Su Jin had treated a few of his workers before when they couldn't go to regular hospitals, but she had never met the man himself. The inside of Jaiho's home surprised her. It was clean and simple, not flashy like she expected. Art from Earth and other planets hung on the walls. The floors were real wood, which cost a fortune this far from Earth. The driver led her to a room filled with medical equipment. Some she recognized, some she didn't. In the middle was a small bed where a tiny alien lay. Next to it stood Jaiho Kim, looking nothing like the monster from the stories. He was a middle-aged man in a plain black suit, watching the alien child with worried eyes. "Dr. Yoon," he said, not looking away from the child. "Thank you for coming." "You didn't give me much choice," she said, then wished she hadn't. Making crime bosses angry was a bad idea. But Jaiho just nodded. "True, but I need someone with your knowledge of alien biology. This is important." Su Jin moved closer to the bed. The alien child was Velsarian. She had treated a few adults from that species before. This one was very young, maybe equal to a 3-year-old human. It had 6 thin limbs and skin that seemed to glow faintly in the room's dim light. The child's breathing was quick and shallow. "Where did you get a Velsarian child?" she asked, opening her medical bag. "The parents left it at the spaceport," Jaiho said. "They couldn't afford treatment." Su Jin looked up in surprise. "And you took it in?" Jaiho didn't answer. "The child's name is Navi. Can you help?" Su Jin started examining the young Velsarian. She used her scanner to look inside its body, checking each organ system. The child made soft humming sounds when she touched certain spots. "It's not in pain," she explained, seeing Jai-Ho's concerned look. That's how Velsarian children communicate, like human babies crying, but gentler. After 30 minutes, Su-Jin had completed her examination. She sat in a chair across from Jai-Ho, who waited patiently. The gravitic organs are severely underdeveloped, she explained. Velsarians need these organs to control how they move in different gravity conditions. Think of them like internal gyroscopes. She pointed to the scanner results showing 6 small organs near the child's spine. These should be twice this size by now. What happens without them? Jai-Ho asked. On their homeworld, with its changing gravity fields, the child would never walk properly. They would have trouble with basic movement. Eventually, as they grow, the strain on their other organs would become too much. Su-Jin paused. It's considered untreatable on their world. Very expensive attempts have been made, but they almost always fail. Jai-Ho nodded, studying the child's bright eyes that seemed to track their conversation. But with human medical technology, we have different approaches. Theoretically, Su-Jin hesitated. She had an idea, but it was risky. Human gravitic compensation technology developed for deep space mining might be adaptable. The devices we use to help humans work in changing gravity fields might be modified to support Navy systems. But it's never been attempted. It would require extensive research, custom equipment, and many tests. The chances of success are unknown. She closed her scanner. Why do you care about this child, Mr. Kim? This doesn't fit with your reputation. Jai-Ho stood and walked to a window overlooking the garden outside. For a long moment, he was quiet. I had a brother, he finally said. He needed medical help we couldn't afford. I promised him I would find a way. I failed. He turned back to face her. You have whatever resources you need. My organization has certain specialized equipment that might prove useful. Su-Jin understood the hidden meaning. Jai-Ho's smuggling operations had access to advanced technology that wasn't available to the public. This could take months, maybe years, she warned. Then you should get started, Jai-Ho said. I'll have rooms prepared for you here. Name your price. Su-Jin looked at the small alien child. In her 15 years as a xenobiologist, she had never had unlimited resources to try experimental treatments. This could be her chance to develop something truly new, something that could help not just this child but others like it. I'll need a lab, assistants who can keep secrets, and access to your technology, she said. Jai-Ho nodded. Done. Later that night, after Su-Jin had settled into her new workspace, Jai-Ho met with his top lieutenants in his office. Ta-Wu, his most trusted man, spoke what everyone was thinking. Boss, why are we spending so much on one alien kid? Is there something valuable about it? Something we can use? The other lieutenants waited for Jai-Ho's answer. They were used to him making smart business decisions, not taking in strays. Jai-Ho poured drinks for everyone before answering. What do you know about new medical technology, Ta-Wu? Not much, Ta-Wu admitted. If we develop a way to help Velsarians with this condition, who do you think would pay for it? The room grew quiet as the men considered this. The Velsarian government, one suggested. Rich Velsarian families, offered another. Jai-Ho nodded. Exactly. And who would control this technology? Set the price. Decide who gets treatment. Now they understood. It wasn't just about the child. It was a business opportunity. Medical technology was one of the few markets that could be more profitable than weapons or drugs, and much less risky legally. But later, when everyone had left, Jai-Ho sat alone by Navy's bed. The child was sleeping peacefully for the first time since arriving. Jai-Ho gently adjusted the blanket covering the small alien. I told them it was about money, he whispered. Maybe part of it is, but you and I know better, don't we? He touched the child's small hand, and to his surprise, the little Velsarian gripped his finger in return. Sometimes opportunity and redemption arrive in the same package, Jai-Ho said softly. and sometimes a second chance comes in a very strange form. 3 months after Dr. Sujin arrived, one of Jaiho's largest warehouses looked very different. Where once there were boxes of illegal goods and weapons, now there were computers, medical machines, and research equipment. Workers who used to move smuggled items now carefully carried delicate tools and parts. Jaiho stood at the entrance, watching the busy room. He had spent millions of credits on this project already. Some of his business partners thought he was crazy, but every time he visited Navi, watching the small alien struggle to move properly, he knew this money was well spent. "How is the progress today?" Jaiho asked as he walked to Sujin's main work area. The doctor looked tired. Dark circles showed under her eyes, and her normally neat hair was messy. She had been working 16 hours a day for weeks. "We had a breakthrough last night," she said, pointing to a small device on her desk. It was the size of a human thumb, made of shiny metal with tiny blue lights. "This is the first working prototype of a gravitic stabilizer. It creates a controlled gravity field that should help support Navy's underdeveloped organs." Jaiho picked up the device carefully. "So small. It has to be. We need to place 6 of these around Navi's body, near each gravitic organ. They'll work together to create a stable field." Sujin rubbed her eyes. The hard part was making them respond to Navi's natural movements. "We don't want to control the child's body. We want to support it." "When can we try it?" Jaiho asked. "Tomorrow. I need to run final tests today." Jaiho nodded and placed the device back on the desk. "Get some rest, doctor. You can't help Navi if you collapse." Sujin smiled weakly. "I will. Soon." Jaiho left the warehouse and went to his home, where Navi stayed in a special room. The room's gravity was carefully controlled to be easier for the young Velsarian. Jaiho had hired a Velsarian caretaker named Dory to help with Navi's daily needs. When Jaiho entered the room, Navi was trying to reach a toy on a shelf. The child's movements were jerky and uncontrolled. Sometimes Navi would float upward unexpectedly, or suddenly drop to the floor. It was painful to watch. "Jaiho," Navi called happily, the child's voice musical and light. In the past months, Navi had learned human language quickly. "Hello, little one," Jaiho said, walking over. He picked up the toy, a puzzle with moving parts, and handed it to Navi. "How are you feeling today?" "Better. Dory taught me new words." Navi's large eyes blinked up at him. "Will I ever fly properly like other Gulsarians?" The question made Jaiho's chest hurt. He sat down next to the child. "Dr. Sujin is working very hard to help you. Tomorrow we might try something new." Navi's skin brightened slightly, a Velsarian sign of happiness. "Really? Will it fix me?" "We hope so," Jaiho said carefully. "But even if it doesn't work right away, we'll keep trying. I promise." The next day, everyone gathered in the medical room. Navi lay on a special bed while Sujin carefully placed the 6 small devices on the child's body. Each one stuck gently to the skin and began to glow blue. "These will communicate with each other," Sujin explained to Navi. "They'll help your body control how you move. It might feel strange at first." "Will it hurt?" Navi asked quietly. "No," Sujin promised. "If anything feels bad, tell me right away and I'll turn them off." Jaiho stood nearby, trying not to show how nervous he felt. He had risked his reputation, spent millions, and turned part of his criminal operation into a medical research facility, all for this moment. Sujin used a small control pad to activate the devices. They hummed softly, and the blue glow grew stronger. Navi's eyes widened. "How does it feel?" Sujin asked. "Warm," Navi said. "And different, like I'm being held up by invisible hands." "Try to sit up," Sujin suggested. Normally, this simple movement was hard for Navi. The child would push up too hard and float away, or not hard enough and fall back. But this time, Navi sat up smoothly. No jerking, no floating away. "It's working," Sujin whispered in amazement. The stabilizers are supporting the gravitic field perfectly. Can I try to stand? Navi asked excitedly. Su-jin nodded, and Ji-ho moved closer, ready to catch the child if needed. Navi carefully moved to the edge of the bed and placed all 6 limbs on the floor. Then, with a look of deep concentration, the young Vulsarian stood up. For the first time, Navi stood steady and tall. The usual wobbling and floating didn't happen. Instead, the child took one step, then another. Each step was careful but smooth, the typical Vulsarian floating walk, but controlled and purposeful. Ji-ho felt something warm in his throat and realized he was holding back tears. He had not cried since his brother died many years ago. I'm walking. Navi called out happily, taking more steps around the room. I'm walking like others. Su-jin was checking her monitors, smiling widely. The stabilizers are working perfectly with Navi's body. They're not controlling the movement. They're just providing the support the underdeveloped organs can't. Over the next few months, Navi grew stronger each day. The stabilizers were improved several times, made smaller and more efficient. Soon, they were barely visible on Navi's skin. Ji-ho began bringing Navi with him to his office sometimes. He noticed that the child loved looking at the star maps and shipping routes on his screens. One day, while Ji-ho was trying to plan a difficult delivery route through a tricky gravity field, Navi pointed at the screen. That way would be faster, the child said, tracing a different path with one thin finger. Ji-ho looked at the suggested route. Why do you think so? The gravity pulls stronger here and here, Navi explained, pointing to different spots. If your ship uses these pulls instead of fighting them, it uses less fuel and goes faster. Ji-ho ran the calculations. The child was right. The route would save 2 days and 30% of the fuel. After that, Ji-ho began asking Navi to look at more routes. The young Vulsarian could see patterns in gravity fields that even computers missed. Soon, Navi was helping optimize routes for Ji-ho's legitimate shipping business, calculating complex gravitational trajectories with natural ease. One evening, as Ji-ho and Taiwu watched Navi work with a 3D map of a difficult shipping lane, Taiwu nodded approvingly. The child is becoming quite an asset, he observed. The shipping efficiency is up 40% since Navi started helping. And when the medical technology is ready for market, we'll make billions. Ji-ho looked at Navi, who was humming happily while working on the map. The child had started wearing human-style clothes that Ji-ho had specially made. Navi had favorites, always choosing blue when possible. No, Ji-ho said firmly. Navi is not an asset. But boss, the prophet. Ji-ho cut him off. Navi is becoming family. Later that night, after Taiwu left, Ji-ho sat with Navi in the garden. The child was using the newly developed stabilizers to practice floating gently above the ground, something all Vulsarian children learn to do on their homeworld. Ji-ho, Navi asked suddenly, why did you help me when my parents couldn't? Ji-ho was quiet for a moment. Because a long time ago, I couldn't help someone I loved. I promised myself I would never fail that way again if I had the chance. Are you happy you helped me? Ji-ho smiled, something his business associates rarely saw him do. Yes, little one. Very happy. 2 years passed since Navi's first steps with the gravitic stabilizers. The young Vulsarian grew stronger and smarter each day. Navi now moved with grace that amazed everyone. The 6 tiny devices had been improved many times. Now they were almost invisible, sitting just under Navi's pale skin. Ji-ho had changed too. His business focused more on legal shipping now. His ships traveled faster and used less fuel than any others because of Navi's special talent. The young Vulsarian could see patterns in space that others missed. Navi could calculate paths through gravity fields that made ships travel twice as fast. Word spread about the miracle child. Traders talked about a young Vulsarian working with humans who could plot courses through space better than any computer. They said this child could feel the pull of stars and planets like it was music. Soon, These stories reached every corner of the trading networks. On a small mining planet 3 systems away, a Velsarian couple heard these rumors while shopping for supplies. Morrow and Leary have been working hard in the mines, saving money, hoping someday to afford treatment for the child they had left behind. When they heard about the special Velsarian child working with humans, they looked at each other with wide eyes. Could it be? Leary whispered. A child with gravitic problems who now can move normally. Morrow said, working with humans. It must be ours. They spent their savings on tickets to Jiho's planet. They had no plan except to find their child. On a warm morning, guards at Jiho's compound reported 2 Velsarians at the gate. They were demanding to see Jiho Kim and a young Velsarian named Navi. Jiho was in his office with Navi, looking at maps for a new shipping route, when Tawu brought the news. They say they're the child's parents, Tawu explained. Jiho's face turned hard. Keep Navi here, he ordered. I'll deal with this. Navi looked up from the maps. Who's at the gate, Jiho? No one important, Jiho said, but his voice was tight. Stay and finish your work. I'll be back soon. In the main hall of his house, Jiho met the Velsarian couple. He recognized them immediately from that day at the spaceport. They looked thinner and their clothes were worn from hard work, but it was them. Where is our child? Leary demanded, her voice shaking with emotion. Jiho stood tall, his face showing nothing. 6 of his security team stood behind him. You abandoned your child 2 years ago. You left a baby to die or be found by strangers. We had no choice, Morrow said, stepping forward. One of Jiho's guards put a hand on his weapon. Morrow stopped moving but kept talking. We tried everything on our world. No one could help. We couldn't watch our child suffer anymore. And now you want the child back? Jiho asked coldly. Now that Navi can walk and is becoming famous for special talents. Navi. Leary's eyes widened. That's what you named our child. On our world, that means little star. I didn't know, Jiho admitted, but it fits. Please, Leary begged, tears forming in her large eyes. We just want to see our child. To know Navi is okay. You abandoned your child, Jiho said coldly, flanked by his security team. I provided what you couldn't. We had no choice, Leary cried. The medical costs. Jiho cut her off. And what will you do if I let you see Navi? Take the child back to your world where the medical technology doesn't exist to keep the stabilizers working. Or perhaps sell your story to the media. The famous miracle child reunited with poor working parents. Morrow's face darkened with anger. We are not here for money or fame. We just want, boss. A guard ran into the room, his face worried. We have a problem. Galactic patrol ships just entered orbit, 3 of them. They're sending messages about illegal alien technology and demanding to land. Jiho's mind raced. Someone had reported them to the authorities. The Galactic Patrol enforced laws about technology sharing between species. Some of the methods they had used to help Navi might be considered illegal under those laws. Who knew you were coming here? Jiho asked the Velsarian couple sharply. No one, Morrow said, looking confused. We told no one. Han Bin, Jiho called to one of his men. Check if Cho Min-soo has any ships in the area. Cho Min-soo was Jiho's biggest rival in the sector. They have fought over shipping routes for years. Already did, boss, Han Bin replied. One of his cargo ships is in orbit. Arrived yesterday. Jiho nodded grimly. So that's it. He followed you, he said to the Velsarians. He's been trying to learn about our medical technology for months. You led him right to us, and now he's called the patrol to raid us while he watches. We didn't know, Leary said, horrified. We just wanted to find our child. And now you might have ruined everything, Jiho said angrily. If they take our research, Navi's treatment could be stopped. Do you understand? Your child would lose the ability to move normally again. The room grew tense. Guards were checking weapons and receiving reports through their earpieces. Jeho was giving orders, preparing for the patrol's arrival. The Velsarian couple stood forgotten in the middle of this chaos, looking lost and afraid. Then, a hush fell over the room. Everyone turned to look at the doorway. Navi floated there, not touching the ground at all. The young Velsarian moved with perfect control, gracefully hovering a few inches above the floor. It was a movement no Velsarian with gravitic organ problems had ever achieved. It required perfect balance and control. Even healthy Galsarians found it difficult. Navi's skin glowed with a soft blue light, a sign of strong emotion in Velsarians. The child looked at the two strange Velsarians, then at Jeho, then back again. "Are these my birth parents?" Navi asked calmly. Jeho nodded, unable to speak for a moment. He had never seen Navi float with such perfect control before. Lyri stepped forward, her hands reaching out but stopping short of touching. "Yes," she whispered. "We are your parents. We never stopped thinking about you." Navi studied them carefully. "I remember your voices. From before. From when I was very small." Moro made a soft sound of surprise. "You remember us?" "Not clearly, but I know your voices." Navi turned to Jeho. "I heard everything from your office. I know about the patrol ships coming." Jeho nodded. "We have to prepare. We might have to leave quickly." "I want to speak to my parents first," Navi announced with quiet dignity. "Alone, please, Jeho." Jeho looked at the child he had raised for 2 years, floating there with perfect poise despite the chaos around them. He saw the determination in Navi's eyes. "5 minutes," he said at last. "Then we need to move." As he left the room with his security team, Jeho glanced back. He saw Navi floating closer to the Velsarian couple. He saw Lyri reach out with trembling hands to touch her child's face. He saw Moro's eyes fill with tears. Jeho felt a strange pain in his chest. For the first time since finding Navi, he wondered if he might lose the child he had come to love as family. The Galactic patrol ships landed outside Jeho's compound. Officers in blue uniforms surrounded the main building. Their captain, a tall woman with short gray hair, stepped forward. "Jeho Kim," she called through a speaker. "We have reports of illegal alien technology being developed here. Surrender now." Inside, Jeho looked out the window at the officers. His security team waited for orders, weapons ready. Then he felt a small hand touch his arm. Navi stood beside him, looking calm. "Let them in," Navi said. "I have a plan." Jeho hesitated. "They will take our research. They might arrest us all." "Trust me," Navi said, "like you asked me to trust you 2 years ago." After a moment, Jeho nodded. "Open the gates," he ordered. The patrol officers entered cautiously. The captain looked surprised when Jeho met them in the main hall with no weapons. Moro and Lyri stood to one side, looking nervous. Dr. Sujin waited nearby with her medical files ready. "We receive reports of illegal technology transfer between species," the captain said. "Someone claimed you're using modified smuggling equipment to alter Velsarian physiology." "Not exactly," Jeho replied. "We developed medical technology to help this child." He gestured to Navi, who floated forward. The patrol officers stared in amazement as the young Velsarian moved through the air with perfect control. "I have a condition called gravitic organ deficiency," Navi explained in a clear voice. "My birth parents had to leave me because they couldn't get help on our world." "These are your parents?" the captain asked, pointing to Moro and Lyri. "Yes," Navi said. "And Jeho is also my family. He saved me." The captain looked confused. "So this isn't a kidnapping situation?" "No," Navi said firmly. "Please, everyone sit down. I want to explain something important." To Jeho's surprise, the captain nodded. Soon, everyone was seated in the large meeting room. The patrol officers, Jeho and his team, Moro and Lyri, and Dr. Sujin. Navi floated in the center, looking at each face. The meeting room fell silent as Navi explained their choice to the assembled humans and Velsarians. Jai-Ho gave me life when I was abandoned. Dr. Sujin gave me mobility when my own people said it was impossible. Navi turned to Moro and Leary. You are my birth parents, but they have become my family too. Navi floated over to Dr. Sujin. These small devices under my skin work with my natural organs. They don't replace them. They help them grow stronger. Already my natural organs are 30% bigger than they were 2 years ago. The doctor nodded, adding, the technology adapts to the child's growth. It's not permanent control, it's rehabilitation. Navi continued, on my homeworld, many children like me are hidden away because they can't move properly. Some die young, but this technology could help them all. The patrol captain frowned. But using modified smuggling technology for medical purposes crosses species boundaries. There are laws. Jai-Ho stepped forward, surprising everyone with his proposal. That's why I'm establishing the legitimate medical foundation, with Navi as its first success story. We will work with proper authorities, follow all regulations, and share this technology legally. You? The captain looked skeptical. Jai-Ho Kim, the smuggler. Former smuggler, Jai-Ho corrected. People can change, Captain. Sometimes, they just need the right reason. He looked at Navi with a small smile. The young Velsarian floated to the center of the room again. Please, let us show you our research. Let us prove this technology can help many people across different worlds. After much discussion, the patrol captain agreed to inspect their work rather than shut it down immediately. Dr. Sujin showed her the careful research, the testing, and the improvements in Navi's health. The captain was impressed despite herself. This could be handled legally, she admitted, with proper registration and oversight. That's exactly what we want, Jai-Ho said. Later, when the patrol ships had left with promises to return with proper permits rather than arrest warrants, Jai-Ho sat with Moro and Leary in his garden. Navi played nearby, floating between flowering trees. What happens now? Moro asked uncertainly. Jai-Ho watched Navi for a moment before answering. That depends on what you want. You could take Navi back to your world, but the technology needs regular maintenance. Or you could stay here, Dr. Sujin suggested, joining them. We need people who understand Velsarian culture and biology for this project to succeed. Leary looked at Jai-Ho with tears in her eyes. You truly care for our child, don't you? Yes, Jai-Ho said simply. Navi changed everything for me. 6 months later, the Jai-Ho Medical Initiative opened its first facility. The building was large and bright, with the latest equipment inside. A sign at the entrance showed a human hand and a Velsarian hand reaching toward each other. Inside, Dr. Sujin led the research team. Her office walls were covered with awards and thank you messages from the first patients they had helped. Down the hall, Moro and Leary worked with newly arrived Velsarian families, explaining the treatment and helping them adjust. Many of Jai-Ho's former smugglers now wore clean uniforms with the initiative's logo. Some worked as technicians, maintaining the special equipment. Others handled security or transportation. All of them took pride in their new legal work. Within a year, 2 more facilities opened on different worlds. The technology improved with each patient they treated. Children who once couldn't walk now ran and played. Adults who had lived with pain found relief. Jai-Ho's reputation changed too. People who once feared him now respected him. The Galactic Patrol even asked for his help with other medical projects. One evening, Jai-Ho stood at the back of a large room where Navi was demonstrating the newest version of the gravitic stabilizers to a group of alien diplomats. The young Velsarian, now nearly 10 years old by human counting, moved with incredible grace, floating and spinning in ways that made the audience gasp with amazement. Quite a change from the criminal life, Ta Wu said, standing beside his boss. Jai-Ho nodded. Do you miss it? The danger, the profits. Ta Wu considered the question. Sometimes, but this is better. We help people now. And make even more money doing it, Jai-Ho added with a small smile. They watched as Navi finished the demonstration to loud applause. The young Velsarian bowed, then floated over to where Moro and Leary stood proudly. The family embraced, then turned to include Jai-Ho in their circle. Looking at this strange family, 2 Velsarian parents, 1 human criminal, and a child who had brought them all together, Jai-Ho felt a deep sense of peace. He thought about that day at the spaceport when he had seen a small bundle left behind. Who could have known where that moment would lead? Perhaps, he thought, this was humanity's greatest strength. The ability to find opportunity in the most unlikely places and transform it into something that transcended species and worlds alike. As the diplomats lined up to speak with Navi, Jai-Ho noticed a small Velsarian child watching from a wheelchair. Tomorrow would be this child's first treatment. Soon, they too would float and move freely. 1 child abandoned. 1 moment of compassion. Thousands of lives changed forever. Jai-Ho smiled. Some smuggled goods were worth more than others. The end.